Scroll back through internet archives, past the professional headshots and red carpet glamour, and you'll find them the photographs that studios wish had been deleted forever. Matthew McConaughey's 1,999 mugshot showing unmistakable recession. Elon Musk's late 90s appearances with advanced balding. Wayne Rooney's thinning crown before age 25. These images document a truth that later vanished not through time, but through surgical intervention costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. What happened between those early photographs and today's full hairlines? The answer involves Swedish surgeons, Dublin clinics, discreet London specialists, and a code of silence that protects the industry's most profitable secret. 1. Matthew McConaughey. In 1999, Matthew McConaughey's mugshot became more than a tabloid curiosity. It exposed what Hollywood had tried to conceal. The temple peaks had clearly receded, and the frontal hair appeared sparse and thin. For a romantic lead whose effortless charm defined his career, the timing couldn't have been worse. By the year 2000, McConaughey made a strategic move. He completely shaved his head. Studios called it a fresh start for a new role. Industry insiders knew better. When his hair returned in 2001, it arrived fuller, denser, and without any trace of the recession that had marked his scalp just months earlier. The transformation was too perfect, too complete. A Swedish surgeon later claimed at an international hair transplant convention that McConaughey's case had been presented as a success story for an entire decade. At first, no one took credit. Then, after 3 years, someone from Sweden began claiming they had performed the procedure. McConaughey himself maintained a different narrative. He insisted he simply used a topical ointment applied once daily for a few minutes, a story that hair restoration experts found implausible given the dramatic and permanent nature of his transformation. The real evidence appeared in the details. His hairline didn't just stop receding, it reversed by several centimeters. The density returned to areas that had been visibly thinning. And most tellingly, well into his 50s, there was no progression of hair loss, a biological impossibility for someone with androgenetic alopecia. The procedure appeared technically successful, executed with modern techniques that avoided the obvious plug patterns of earlier eras, but the secrecy created its own problem. McConaughey became trapped between the truth everyone could see and the story he refused to confirm. His hair returned, but so did the questions that would follow him for decades. 2. Jude Law. Jude Law built his career on ethereal beauty, the kind of refined, almost aristocratic appearance that made him Hollywood's definition of elegant masculinity. His breakout roles in The Talented Mr. Ripley and Cold Mountain showcased not just talent but an enviable hairline that framed his striking features perfectly. But androgenetic alopecia shows no mercy, not even to leading men. By the mid-2000s, Law's temples had begun their slow retreat, and the frontal area showed progressive thinning. For someone whose image had been so carefully cultivated, the changes were impossible to ignore. Law chose silence as his strategy. Unlike some celebrities who publicly addressed their procedures, he never confirmed or denied speculation. However, experts analyzing recent photographs noted a strategic restoration. The temples and frontal zone appeared denser, with grafts positioned to recreate the refined hairline of his younger years. If Law underwent follicular unit extraction, the estimated work would have required 2,500 to 3,000 grafts, a substantial intervention targeting Norwood stage 3 or 4 hair loss. The procedure would have focused on reframing his face with subtle definition, avoiding the artificial density that plagued earlier generations. The result appeared carefully controlled, not frozen in artificial youth, but maintained at a believable middle ground. Law's face showed natural aging, while his hairline remained strategically stable. It was neither obviously surgical nor entirely natural, existing in the aesthetic limbo that modern techniques allow but rarely perfect. The irony was that Law's receding hairline had given him a distinguished, mature quality that suited many of his later roles. The restoration returned him to a younger version of himself, but one increasingly disconnected from the aging visible everywhere else. He gained coverage, but lost the natural evolution his face had earned. 3. Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner represented rugged American masculinity, the leading man who needed no artifice to command the screen. His roles demanded presence, authority, and authenticity. But behind the cameras, Costner faced the same genetic reality that millions of men confront: progressive hair loss, that threatened the image Hollywood had built around him. The evidence appeared in stages. Photographs from the 1990s and early 2000s showed clear thinning, particularly around the hairline and crown. The recession was gradual but consistent, the natural pattern of male aging captured in high definition. Then came the transformation. Recent images revealed noticeably fuller hair, especially around the previously compromised areas. The hairline appeared lower, denser, more defined. Industry analysts estimated approximately 2,500 grafts had been transplanted, likely using follicular unit transplantation to achieve the desired density. The procedure targeted strategic zones, restoring the frontal line while improving overall thickness. Surgeons carefully positioned the grafts to mimic natural growth patterns, creating a seamless blend with existing hair. The goal wasn't dramatic reversal, but controlled enhancement. Costner never publicly confirmed the procedure, maintaining the calculated silence that many celebrities adopt when addressing aesthetic interventions. The before and after evidence, however, spoke clearly enough. His hair had not simply stopped thinning, it had reversed course in ways that biology doesn't naturally allow. The visual impact was undeniable. The restored hairline gave Costner a more youthful appearance, subtly enhancing his facial features. But it also created the familiar disconnection, a face marked by decades of experience topped with hair that defied the timeline. Not obviously artificial, but not entirely convincing either. 4. James Nesbitt. James Nesbitt did something almost revolutionary in Hollywood. He told the truth. While other celebrities hid behind strategic lighting and calculated denials, the Northern Irish actor became completely transparent about his battle with hair loss and the procedures he underwent to combat it. Nesbitt had been losing his hair for years, and unlike many in the industry, he admitted the psychological toll openly. It's ridiculous, but it's horrible going bald. Anyone who says it isn't is lying. At 45, after trying various treatments without success, he made the decision to pursue hair transplantation. The first procedure was followed by a second, which Nesbitt confirmed publicly through the Press Association, a refreshingly honest approach in an industry built on illusion. But transparency didn't mean the procedures were perfect. Over a 10-year period, Nesbitt underwent multiple interventions, ultimately receiving over 10,000 grafts at a clinic in Dublin, equivalent to more than 20,000 individual hairs transplanted. The sheer volume revealed the challenge. Hair loss doesn't stop simply because follicles are transplanted. Nesbitt addressed his thinning in stages, allowing gradual changes rather than sudden transformation. For an actor constantly in the public eye, this strategic approach minimized the jarring visual shifts that often expose surgical intervention. In 2017, Nesbitt publicly credited the transplants with improving his career opportunities, stating they helped him secure better roles. The procedures hadn't just restored his hair, they had restored his confidence and, by extension, his marketability. But even Nesbitt's openness couldn't escape the fundamental reality. 10,000 grafts represented a massive, ongoing battle against genetic programming. Each procedure addressed new recession, new thinning, new areas requiring coverage. The transplants weren't a solution, they were a holding pattern against inevitable progression. 5. Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney was 25 years old when he made a decision that would define how an entire generation of British men viewed hair loss. In 2011, at the peak of his football career, Rooney publicly announced on Twitter that he'd undergone a hair transplant, becoming one of the first major athletes to address the procedure openly. The transplant took place at a renowned London clinic using follicular unit extraction. Individual hair follicles were harvested from the back and sides of Rooney's head and transplanted to the thinning frontal areas. Experts estimated approximately 2,500 grafts were transplanted in the first operation, a substantial intervention for someone so young. Rooney proudly showcased the results in the months following the procedure. His hair appeared visibly fuller, and the once receding hairline had been strategically restored. For a public figure constantly photographed and scrutinized, the transformation was impossible to miss. But youth cuts both ways in hair restoration. Rooney's early onset baldness meant aggressive genetic programming, the kind that doesn't stop simply because follicles are moved. Within a few years, the areas surrounding the transplanted hair continued thinning, creating the familiar pattern of isolated density amid ongoing recession. The problem with transplanting hair at 25 is simple. The hair loss isn't finished. Surgeons can only work with available donor follicles. and aggressive early intervention often means insufficient coverage for future recession. Rooney's openness was admirable, but it also documented a challenge many young men face. The transplant addresses current loss, not the progression that continues for decades. By his 30s, Rooney's hair showed the limitations of early intervention. The transplanted areas remained, but the contrast with surrounding thinning became more pronounced. He hadn't made a mistake, he'd simply confronted a genetic reality that no surgery could permanently resolve. 6. Gordon Ramsay. Gordon Ramsay built an empire on brutal honesty, a chef who never hesitated to expose failures in other people's kitchens. But when it came to his own appearance, Ramsay chose a different approach: complete silence. While he never publicly confirmed any procedure, hair restoration experts examining his transformation found the evidence unmistakable. Early photographs showed clear temple recession and noticeable crown thinning, classic Norwood Stage 3 pattern baldness. Then, gradually, the recession reversed. The temples filled in by 2 to 3 centimeters, crown density increased by an estimated 40%, and overall coverage improved significantly. Experts identified classic follicular unit extraction patterns in Ramsay's restoration. The natural-looking results suggested high-quality work, likely performed at one of London's elite Harley Street clinics. The estimated investment: 2 procedures requiring 30 to 3,500 grafts total, costing approximately £60,000. The technique appeared carefully executed, maintaining an age-appropriate hairline rather than attempting to recreate youthful density. The improvements blended seamlessly with existing hair, avoiding the obvious artificial appearance that plagued earlier methods. Given Ramsay's intense public presence and preference for a polished image, the choice of follicular unit extraction made strategic sense. The method delivers subtle yet effective results with minimal visible scarring, essential for someone constantly filmed in high definition under harsh kitchen lighting. But Ramsay's silence created its own narrative. Every public appearance, every television program, every photograph fed speculation. His hair became an unacknowledged element of his image, improved but never discussed, transformed but never confirmed. The irony was sharp. Ramsay had built his reputation on exposing artifice and demanding honesty. Yet when it came to his own aesthetic choices, he adopted Hollywood's oldest strategy: improve the appearance, deny the intervention, and let the audience draw their own conclusions. The results were technically successful, but the secrecy revealed that even brutal honesty has its limits. 7. Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck inherited more than acting talent from his family. He also inherited the genetics for male pattern baldness. Throughout his 30s, photographs captured the slow but unmistakable recession of his temples and thinning across the crown. For an A-list actor whose career depended on maintaining leading man status, the changes represented a silent threat. Then came the transformation. By the mid-2000s, Affleck's hairline had mysteriously reversed its retreat. The temples filled in, the crown thickened, and the overall density increased dramatically. Hair restoration experts analyzing the before and after images identified clear signs of follicular unit extraction, the modern technique that extracts individual follicles and transplants them to thinning areas. The estimated work was substantial. Experts believe Affleck underwent multiple sessions over several years, with approximately 2,000 to 3,000 grafts transplanted in total. The procedures likely used the FUE method, favored by celebrities for its minimal scarring and natural-looking results. Unlike the crude plug techniques that plagued earlier generations, Affleck's restoration appeared carefully planned and expertly executed. The hairline was positioned at an age-appropriate level, avoiding the too low, too perfect appearance that immediately signals surgical intervention. The density increased gradually, creating the illusion of natural improvement rather than sudden transformation. But Affleck never confirmed the procedures publicly. Like many Hollywood stars, he chose strategic silence, allowing the visual evidence to speak while maintaining plausible deniability. Every red carpet appearance, every film premiere, every paparazzi photograph fed speculation that he never addressed. The irony was that Affleck's original receding hairline had given him a mature, distinguished quality that suited many of his dramatic roles. The restoration returned him to a younger version of himself, but one increasingly disconnected from the face that continued aging normally. His forehead showed wrinkles, his features grew harder, yet his hairline remained frozen at 35. The transformation was technically successful, Modern methods had delivered what the old plug techniques never could, but success created its own prison. Affleck was now committed to maintaining the results through ongoing medical therapy and potentially future procedures. The hair loss he'd tried to stop hadn't disappeared, it had simply been postponed, requiring constant vigilance to preserve the illusion. 8. Elon Musk. In the late 1990s, Elon Musk was a young entrepreneur building his first internet companies. Photographs from that era told an uncomfortable story: advanced hair loss with significant temple recession and crown thinning. The pattern suggested aggressive male baldness that would likely progress to complete frontal loss within years. Then something impossible occurred. By the early 2000s, Musk's hair had returned. Not subtly, not gradually, but dramatically. The receding temples filled in completely, the thinning crown regained density, and the overall coverage transformed from Norwood, stage 5 or 6, back to something resembling a full head of hair. Hair restoration experts examining the transformation estimate Musk underwent at least 2 major procedures, possibly more. The total graft count likely reached 5,000 to 5,500 follicles, an extraordinary number representing one of the most extensive celebrity restorations documented. Each graft contained multiple hairs, meaning potentially 15,000 individual hairs were surgically relocated. The procedures probably combined older strip harvesting methods with modern follicular unit extraction. Early interventions in the late 90s or early 2000s would have used available techniques of that era, while later maintenance procedures could have employed more refined FUE methods to add density and refine the hairline. The visual evidence suggests ongoing medical maintenance as well. Hair transplants alone don't prevent continued loss in non-transplanted areas. Musk's sustained density decades after the initial procedures indicates likely use of finasteride or similar medications to protect remaining natural hair and preserve transplanted follicles. Unlike others who attempted to hide their procedures, Musk's transformation was too dramatic for plausible denial. The before and after images circulated widely, becoming an internet phenomenon. Yet Musk himself never publicly confirmed the procedures, maintaining the same calculated silence adopted by most celebrities facing similar speculation. The transformation raised uncomfortable questions about appearance and success. Did Musk's restored hair contribute to his business success by improving how investors and partners perceived him? The correlation was impossible to prove, but equally impossible to ignore. The balding entrepreneur of 1999 became the full-haired visionary of the 2000s, and his company's fortunes rose accordingly. But the restoration came with hidden costs. Maintaining the results required ongoing effort, daily medications, regular monitoring, potentially additional procedures as natural aging continued. Musk hadn't defeated genetics. He'd simply committed to fighting them indefinitely. The hair that returned wasn't natural. It was sustained through constant intervention, a daily reminder that even billionaires can't truly buy immunity from biology. 9. Jeremy Piven. Throughout the mid-1990s, Jeremy Piven's hair told the story that Hollywood didn't want audiences to notice. His hairline was clearly receding, the frontal density weakening, the temples retreating at an accelerating pace. For a character actor building momentum toward leading roles, the timing threatened everything. Then came 2010. Piven was vacationing in Hawaii when paparazzi captured something he'd successfully hidden from studio lighting and strategic camera angles: a long, deep scar cutting horizontally across the back of his head. The scar was unmistakable, positioned exactly where surgeons perform follicular unit transplantation using the strip method. The FUT technique, also called the strip method, involves surgically removing a strip of scalp tissue from the donor area and dissecting it into individual grafts for transplantation. The procedure leaves a linear scar that can stretch several inches across the back of the head, permanent evidence impossible to erase. Piven's scar revealed what he'd never publicly admitted. He'd undergone surgical hair restoration, likely years earlier. Comparing photographs from the mid-90s to the 2000s showed the dramatic transformation. The receding hairline had been restored, the thinning frontal area redensified, and the overall coverage improved substantially. Experts analyzing the changes estimate significant graft numbers were transplanted over potentially multiple sessions to achieve such comprehensive restoration. The strip method was common during the era when Piven likely underwent his procedures before FUE became the preferred technique. The linear scar was an accepted trade-off for the ability to harvest large numbers of grafts in a single session. But that scar became a permanent marker, a surgical signature that could never be completely hidden. Piven never publicly confirmed the procedures, despite the obvious visual evidence and the documented scar. He maintained absolute silence, choosing not to address speculation or acknowledge the transformation. That silence became its own statement confirmation through omission. The irony was cruel. The procedure had successfully restored Piven's hair, giving him the density and coverage to continue his career without visible baldness. But the scar that enabled that success also exposed it, turning his vacation photographs into unwanted documentation of surgical intervention. The very thing that solved his problem became the thing that revealed he'd had a problem to solve. Unlike modern FUE techniques that leave minimal scarring, Piven's strip scar was permanent and visible whenever his hair was worn short or wet. He was trapped between maintaining sufficient length to cover the evidence and facing constant scrutiny about why he never cut his hair shorter. The restoration had succeeded, but at the cost of permanent physical evidence that would follow him forever. 10. David Beckham. David Beckham built a global empire not just on football brilliance but on image perfection. Every haircut became a trend. Every style choice was analyzed and imitated worldwide. But in 2018, something shifted. Photographs captured Beckham sporting an unusually short buzz cut, so short it almost looked like preparation for something. By that summer, observers noticed Beckham's hair appeared different at the temples. Areas that had shown slight recession now seemed fuller. The hairline looked lower, denser, more defined. For someone photographed constantly from every angle, the changes were impossible to attribute to lighting or styling alone. By September 2018, the evidence became overwhelming. Beckham's hair had grown out from the buzz cut into a noticeably thicker, fuller style. The temple recession that had been visible in earlier years had vanished. The frontal density appeared enhanced. Hair restoration experts examining the images identified classic signs of follicular unit extraction, subtle but unmistakable improvements, consistent with modern transplant techniques. The strategic buzz cut that summer made perfect sense in retrospect. FUE procedures require shaving the donor area to extract individual follicles. For a celebrity of Beckham's magnitude, a complete head shave provided ideal cover, allowing the procedure while making it appear as just another style choice from someone famous for constantly changing hairstyles. Beckham never confirmed any procedure. His representatives never issued statements, but photographic evidence told a compelling story that experts found difficult to explain through any means other than surgical intervention. The improvements were too specific, too concentrated in areas typical for male pattern baldness treatment. If Beckham underwent FUE, the procedure would have involved extracting follicles from the back and sides of his head, areas genetically resistant to baldness, and transplanting them to the thinning temples and frontal zone. The technique leaves minimal scarring and allows relatively quick recovery, making it ideal for someone who couldn't afford extended downtime from public appearances. The estimated work was modest compared to some celebrity restorations, perhaps 1,500 to 2,000 grafts focused on strategic areas. The goal wasn't dramatic transformation but subtle enhancement, maintaining an already strong hairline while addressing early recession before it became obvious. The result was masterful in its subtlety. Beckham didn't suddenly appear with dramatically more hair, he simply stopped showing progressive hair loss. His hairline stabilized at a youthful level, while the rest of his appearance continued aging naturally. The disconnection was minimal, barely noticeable except to trained eyes analyzing sequential photographs. But that subtlety created its own questions. Was this natural stabilization, medical therapy, strategic styling? The very ambiguity that made the work successful also made it impossible to definitively confirm. Beckham had achieved what many celebrities attempt, but few accomplish: improvement, so subtle that speculation remained just speculation, never hardening into confirmed fact. 11. Jimmy Carr. Jimmy Carr made a career from brutal self-awareness and merciless comedy. Unlike most celebrities who hide behind publicists and strategic silence, Carr chose radical honesty about his aesthetic procedures, including the hair transplant that reversed years of progressive recession. Carr publicly confirmed the procedure in television interviews, describing with characteristic humor how his hairline had been retreating for years. He joked about looking like a snooker-playing vampire before the restoration, acknowledging both the psychological impact of hair loss and his decision to address it surgically. The procedure used follicular unit extraction, the modern technique that avoids the linear scarring of older strip methods. Donor hair was harvested from the back of Carr's head and carefully transplanted to the frontal area where recession had been most visible. The FUE method's minimal scarring was essential for someone who performs regularly under harsh stage lighting. Carr's honesty extended to realistic expectations. He acknowledged the procedure doesn't restore teenage density or completely reverse genetic programming. Instead, it strategically improves coverage in the most visible areas, creating the appearance of a fuller, healthier hairline, while accepting that transplanted hair still requires proper maintenance. The results developed gradually over 6 to 12 months as transplanted follicles established blood supply and began producing new growth. Carr documented the process with his typical self-deprecating humor, making jokes about his appearance during the awkward growth phases when transplanted hairs first emerge. His openness represented something rare in celebrity culture, complete transparency about aesthetic intervention. While others maintained strategic ambiguity, Carr fully acknowledged his procedures, discussing them casually in interviews and comedy routines. The decision transformed potential embarrassment into material, using honesty as both defense and offense. The transplant successfully restored Carr's hairline, improving frontal density and reducing the temple recession that had been progressing for years. The work appeared natural and age-appropriate, avoiding the too-perfect appearance that signals obvious intervention. Under stage lights and high-definition cameras, the results held up to constant scrutiny. But Carr's honesty also exposed a broader truth that even successful procedures require ongoing maintenance through medication and potentially future sessions. Hair loss doesn't stop because follicles are relocated. The genetic programming continues, requiring constant vigilance to preserve results. Carr had bought time and coverage, but not permanent immunity from biology. 12. Calum Best. Calum Best grew up in the shadow of football legend George Best, navigating celebrity from birth. But genetics delivered a challenge that fame couldn't solve: aggressive early-onset hair loss that began visibly thinning his temples and crown while still in his 20s. Unlike celebrities who hide their procedures, Best chose radical transparency. He publicly documented 3 separate hair transplant procedures spanning several years, transforming his progressive baldness into a restoration journey witnessed by millions. The openness was strategic, turning potential embarrassment into branded content. The first procedure focused on redefining Best's receding hairline with approximately 1,200 grafts. The goal was establishing a strong frontal frame while his remaining hair still provided reasonable coverage. The technique used follicular unit extraction, harvesting individual follicles from donor areas at the back and sides of his head. But 1,200 grafts weren't enough. As Best's natural hair loss continued progressing, additional procedures became necessary. The second and third sessions added thousands more grafts, gradually building density across the scalp and addressing new areas, showing thinning. Over 3 procedures, Best received approximately 6,000 total grafts, equivalent to roughly 12,000 individual hairs transplanted. The final session incorporated an innovative approach, harvesting 550 grafts from Best's neck area just beneath the jawline. This beard-to-scalp transplantation expanded available donor supply when traditional scalp sources had been substantially depleted. The technique demonstrated both the extent of Best's hair loss and the creative solutions required to address it. Best's case illustrated a fundamental challenge for young men undergoing hair restoration: the loss doesn't stop after surgery. Each procedure addressed current thinning while new areas continued receding, creating an ongoing cycle of intervention. His transparency documented what others hide. Hair transplants aren't permanent solutions, but ongoing battles against genetic programming. The results were visibly successful. Best's hairline was comprehensively restored, his crown redensified, and his overall coverage dramatically improved from the thin, receding state visible in early photographs. The work appeared natural and age-appropriate, avoiding obvious surgical markers. But the price was steep. 6,000 grafts over 3 procedures represented massive financial investment and multiple recovery periods. The transplanted hair required ongoing maintenance through medication to prevent surrounding natural hair from continuing to thin. And critically, Best had exhausted substantial donor supply, limiting options for future procedures if recession continued. Best's openness served a purpose beyond personal branding. It educated audiences about the realities of hair restoration. His documented journey showed that transplants aren't magic solutions but complex medical procedures requiring multiple sessions, realistic expectations, and ongoing maintenance. Success wasn't measured in permanence but in strategic improvement and continued vigilance.